Imagine paying dues to protect property values, only to have a woman with a clipboard tell you she owns your life, your porch, even your dog's water bowl. What would you do if your HOA fined you for the color of your breath at sunrise? I mean, yeah, that's dramatic. But stick with me. My name's Rex Holloway. And, I'm the guy who inherited a hand-built lakeside cabin and accidentally declared war on the Homeowners Association from hell. The president's name, Karen. Of course, it's Karen. Karen Whitmore. Late 50s. Sunny smile like a warning label. Hair sprayed so stiff, a Michigan gale couldn't move it. She patrols our streets in a pearl-white SUV with community standards, magnets stuck on the doors, and a measuring tape she treats like a sheriff's sidearm. A few years back, right after a divorce that, well, took the wind out of me, I moved into my grandfather's old place. A cedar-scented refuge tucked under tall pines at the edge of Lakeshore Pines. 2.5 acres, give or take, of woods, water, and memory. Grandpa built the dock himself after Korea. He carved our initials in the corner post, oiled the boards every spring until they shone honey brown. You could stand there at dawn and hear loons echo across the flat glass water and swear the world still remembered how to be quiet. I came for that quiet. Instead, I got Karen. First time she knocked. She didn't knock. She pounded. The kind of pounding that announces a raid. Not a neighborly hello. I opened the door and found her flanked by a guy with a laser level and a woman with a clipboard big enough to land a plane on. Karen pushed a trifold brochure into my chest. Smile, not touching her eyes. Courtesy notice. She chirped. You're in violation of 47 provisions. But don't worry, we have a path to compliance. 47. Ma'am, I said, trying to keep the coffee from sloshing. This cabin's older than the association. Previous ownership is irrelevant. She replied, like she was reading weather. All properties within our jurisdiction must comply regardless of vintage. You have 30 days, Mr. Holloway. After that, we assess $500 and $75 a day until rectified. 47 violations for a place that had stood there since long before anyone invented monogrammed yard flags. My dock, 3 feet too long. My fire pit, an unpermitted combustion structure. Wind chimes on the porch. Acoustic pollution capable of provoking neighborhood discord. She actually said that looked pleased with herself, too. I told her the cabin predated the HOA, that my grandfather deeded the land decades before any covenants. Karen's smile tightened. Then, you'll especially appreciate harmonious standards, she said. And I swear her measuring tape hissed out of the holster like a snake tasting the air. That night, I drove to the courthouse. You ever sit under flickering fluorescent lights with dusty maps spread like treasure across a laminate table, tracing survey lines with a finger that won't stop shaking? I was there until closing. I found filings that didn't add up. Not even a little. A set of HOA amendments recorded weeks after my grandfather died, bearing a scratch of a signature that looked like his, but wasn't. The witness, the developer's son. On the current board. Was it proof? Not by itself. But it was smoke. And where there's smoke, there's Karen with a gas can. The next morning, at daybreak, 'cause of course, she returned. This time, with a surveyor named Jimmy, who kept avoiding my eyes. Plus a local tire shop owner, the board used as compliance consultant. They prowled the property like buzzards, snapping photographs through my windows. You can't do that, I said. and Karen tilted her head like a cat. If it can be seen from any common area, it may be documented. Page 9. Paragraph 3. So I installed cameras. Front porch. Dock line. Tree line. For safety. I told myself. Though, honestly, it was because I felt hunted. There's people who think HOA is just bake sales and pool rules. Bless 'em. When a board decides you're a problem, it can feel like living under a microscope with mean hands holding the lens. You should know, I'm a vet. Not that it means much here, except to say I'm not easily rattled. And I know when a perimeter's being probed. Karen's crew probed. Daily inspections. Notes about my trash cans, too visible from the lane. Complaints about my flag placement, insufficient mast compliance. She sent letters to my mortgage company. Turns out, her brother-in-law worked there, hinting I was unstable. She told the waitress at Murphy's Diner that I scared kids. Then acted surprised when it drifted back to me. I started documenting everything. Time-stamped video. Audio. Witnesses. Emails. The smell of her perfume like pink grapefruit left too long in the sun. Paranoia, maybe. But in my line of life, I learned if it ain't written. It didn't happen. Weeks later. The surveyor. Jimmy. Hung back as Karen snapped photos of my dock shadow and muttered. She only paid me half. Wants me to invent deviations. Says if I don't, she'll smear me. He looked like a man chewing tinfoil. Help me get my money, and I'll talk. He whispered. I nodded. Then, as if the universe needed comic relief, my back camera caught Jimmy relieving himself behind my shed. When Karen heard, she went nuclear. Public health violation, she barked. Like she'd caught a terrorist. Ma'am. I said. You hired him. She sputtered. Face red as a stop sign. It would have been funny if I wasn't already staring down a lawsuit. Karen filed 1 civil penalties for chronic non-compliance and threatened to shut down my dock during adjudication. My attorney, Stella Crawford, out of Grand Rapids, met me over coffee and read the filings with a slow, tight smile. There's a lot here, she said. And there's something else. Michigan has what's called a private attorney general framework. If we prove systematic fraud, we can force remedies for everyone she's hurt. She tapped the forged amendment. Also, this cabin being built before the association, if we show the boundary lines they filed are wrong, the whole foundation of jurisdiction crumbles. Stella, I said. That sounds like war. She shrugged. Sometimes you don't get to choose. Word got around. That's the thing about small places, you can whisper in one kitchen and hear an echo in another. An older neighbor, Martha, came by with cookies and a nervous smile. She made me tear up my dahlias, Martha said softly. 40 years I've tended that bed. She said they were the wrong height for the corner sightline. Her hands trembled around the plate. I cried the day I pulled them. A young couple, Ben and Lila, kept their voices low like fugitives. We got fined for chalk drawings in the driveway. Ben said. Chalk. Our twins drew stars. Lila bit her lip. Karen said it invited degeneracy. I made them coffee, 'cause what else do you do when the world tilts? Then Tom stopped by. Afghanistan vet. Shoulders like the hood of a pickup. Eyes that've seen sand and fire. He stood on my porch and couldn't look at me at first. I ain't scared of much, he said. But Karen, she gets into people's heads. Shows up at night. Tells folks I'm a threat. He shook his head. I feel crazy even saying it. A pattern emerged. Karen targeted the vulnerable widows, new parents, retirees on fixed incomes, folks who didn't have time or money to fight. She pressed fines, added interest, then offered payment plans through a management company she recommended. That company AP. Box tied to Whitmore Community Strategies, the business Karen started after washing out of insurance. I didn't have proof then. I had hunches and receipts and neighbors too embarrassed to speak on record. So we built Spine together. We started a coffee can fund at the hardware store. Rex Defense. Martha wrote in tidy script. People slipped in 5s and 10s. One night, a wrinkled hand pushed in a folded note with a 20, for the man making it safe to be old again. I had to walk it off. Meanwhile, Karen escalated. She left final notices with bold red letters on my door. She parked across from my driveway at 9 o'clock at night. Lights off. Just watching. The cameras caught her once crouched behind my lilac bush with a notepad, recording my porch light cycle. I waved at the lens. Smile. Karen, I said, you're on candid camera. Then came the stink. Literally. One humid night. A rank odor slithered across the yard, fish and rot. By morning, she'd called the county to report a septic failure. The inspector showed up, sniffed, and found the culprit, a bag of breaded fish scraps tucked near the tank, still dusted with Murphy's Diner seasoning. My camera had the footage. There was Karen at almost midnight. Pink gardening gloves, tiptoeing like a cartoon cat, dropping the bag, scurrying off. The inspector sighed so hard his mustache fluttered. People, he muttered. We traced money next. Stella and I, plus a neighbor's niece who knew her way around spreadsheets, dug into association financials, those that were public. Anyway, line items didn't line up. Reserves bled cash to consulting. Payments flowed to Whitmore Strategies. To a failed bistro Karen's son tried to run. To a casino in Mount Pleasant. The sums weren't pennies. Tens of thousands. Maybe more. Again, allegations are easy. Proof is a different beast. But the bones of the story rattled loud. Then, my cameras caught something even louder. Karen on the phone. Outside my fence. Telling a private investigator, Danny, brother to Jimmy the surveyor, find something or make it up. I'll pay a bonus if it sticks. Danny recorded his calls. He wasn't proud. But he was tired of getting stiffed. He came clean with a thumb drive, and eyes that kept flinching at shadows. She told me to plant an unpermitted burn barrel, he said. Told me to slip oil by your dock. I didn't. I swear I didn't. His voice shook. She's gonna ruin me. We took all that videos, audio, bank crumbs, neighbor statements to Stella. She folded her hands and said, it's time. The next association meeting crackled like a downed power line. Folks packed the clubhouse, folding chairs, scraping linoleum. The smell of burned coffee. Nervous coughs. That awful fluorescent hum that makes arguments sharper. Karen sat at the front behind a table. Gavel poised like a queen with a wooden scepter. Welcome. She sing-songed. Let's keep comments to 2 minutes. We will maintain civility. I'd rehearsed words but ended up speaking plain. This cabin predates your covenants, I said. Your survey line's wrong. Your fines are harassment. And most important, your amendments were filed after my grandfather passed. With a signature that ain't his. Karen rolled her eyes. Sir, Your conspiracy theories are not Tom Stood. Let him finish. His voice could have sanded wood. Martha lifted her chin. She made me rip up my flowers. She said, voice trembling, 40 years. For what Lila spoke about chalk. A widower named Pete talked about being fined for an unauthorized mobility device, his wheelchair ramp. A retired teacher whispered that Karen threatened to report her for feeding birds. Dale, the tire shop guy, cleared his throat. Karen, he said, you told me the formation paperwork was iffy when I joined the board. His eyes dropped. You said it was no big deal. The room went so quiet you could hear the clock ticking, counting each heartbeat like a metronome. Karen's smile thinned to a wire. This is a defamation circus, she snapped. We will move to executive session. She banged the gavel. Stella stood, cool as lake water in October. Before you do, she said, you should know the Attorney General's office has been notified. People murmured like bees. Karen laughed a little too loudly. The state, please. But the state did care. Because when local news ran a story, Karen tried to pitch me as a dangerous veteran. But the reporter had a nose for rot. Viewers called in. Other neighborhoods. Other Karens. Seniors with fines that ballooned. Single moms bullied about paint shades. A man told to remove a Christmas star because it was potentially divisive. And there, in the final minute of the segment, was my security footage of Karen tiptoeing with that fish bag like a cartoon burglar. Even the anchor's eyebrows went up. I ain't big on television. My voice cracked. I said, too much. My hands wouldn't settle. But the truth has its own shine. The AG's office reached out. They scheduled a meeting here. At my cabin, asked me to bring records. I spent nights sorting papers into tubs labeled with blue painter's tape fines. Surveys. Money. Neighbors. Fish. The night before the meeting, Karen parked outside again. She stared at my porch for a long minute, like she could flip it with her mind. Then, she got out, marched to the line where my gravel meets the lane, and laid down a strip of neon tape like a border. Tomorrow, she said, loud enough for the porch cam to catch. Tomorrow, you're done. I slept badly, dreamed of cracking ice and doors that wouldn't stay closed. Late morning, coffee steaming. A state SUV rolled up. Out stepped Attorney General Elena Morales, compact, composed, a presence like a well-made blade. She shook my hand in the doorway like we were equals, not favor seekers. Mr. Holloway, she said, heard you have some things we need to see. Her investigator, a tall guy with careful eyes, carried a notepad and a gentle nod. We were standing in the kitchen, paper tub spread across the table like a war map when the cabin door rattled once, then flew inward like a storm, ripped it. Karen barreled in, measuring tape at the ready, clipboard clutched like a shield. Immediate compliance inspection, she announced, not even looking up. Unapproved assembly on premises. I'll never forget the moment her eyes met the AG's badge. She froze mid-step, the way a deer does when it sees headlights and hears a horn. 2. And its brain can't pick which to process first. General Morales didn't raise her voice. Ma'am, she said, you just entered a private residence without permission. You will wait outside. We'll discuss the potential criminal implications in a moment. The investigator's pen paused, then moved. Karen's color drained like someone pulled a plug. This is a misunderstanding, she stammered. Open door. Community safety. There's mold. I smelled it. She gestured vaguely. Like mold was a ghost hovering above my coffee pot. Outside. The AG repeated. Now. For the first time since I'd met her. Karen looked small. We spent hours, no exaggeration, walking through evidence. Video of nightly surveillances. Audio of the make-it-up call. Bank statements with consulting sums that marched in lockstep with casino debt. Violations issued for chalk. For flags. For memorial wind chimes. The forged amendment next to my grandfather's real signature on the original deed, which I'd found in a trunk tucked beneath his medals. The deed line reached farther than any of us knew. Right under the rose garden, Karen preened like a crown. Morales asked careful questions. More than once she said, to be clear, in your opinion, used words like alleged, asserted, documented. She was building, brick by brick, something that could stand in court, not just feel good on a porch. When we finished, she stood, looked at the front door, like she could see through it, and said, almost conversational, I believe we've seen enough for today. She stepped outside. Karen was waiting by her SUV, feigning casual by rearranging a stack of papers that didn't need rearranging. The AG walked over. Voice still calm. We will be in touch. Miss Whitmore. In the meantime, do not approach this property. Karen opened her mouth, closed it, nodded. She looked at me then. A flicker of something sharp behind her eyes. Hate. Fear. Both. This isn't over, she said. But it sounded like she was trying to convince herself. It wasn't over. It was changing. Momentum flipped. Neighbors who whispered started speaking louder. Folks who'd paid nonsense fines emailed receipts. Someone slipped a banker's box onto my porch at dawn, copies of board emails. Meeting notes. A spreadsheet with reallocation targets that, if read by a normal human, looked a lot like who we can squeeze for cash without pushback. The author, a consultant, using a Whitmore Strategies email. I read until my eyes burned. Karen didn't slink quietly, though. She filed a police report, claiming I'd threatened her using specialized military training. The officer, who came by, a patient man with a notebook and a tired smile, watched a few minutes of the porch cam footage, closed the notepad, and said, keep documenting. He shook my hand at the door and added, almost under his breath, you're doing fine. The board tried to hunker. Executive session after executive session. But pressure busts pipes. Dale, the tire guy, resigned. Then called me. I didn't sign up for this, he said. Voice thick. She told me it was about property values. Not this. He sent me his notes from the past year. They read like smoke signals from a trapped miner. Then, like the universe enjoys symmetry, the local news came back. The reporter stood on my dock while loons called behind us and asked, what do you want? I surprised myself by telling the truth. I want my neighbor's flowers back. I said, I want the chalk drawings to last till the next rain. I want Tom to sleep without checking the window twice. I want this to feel like a neighborhood and not a fiefdom. My voice cracked again. So what? I'm allowed. The segment aired at 6. At 8. My phone lit with messages from people across the state. At 10. The AG's office called, we're moving. Within days, fast for government. Lightning for law subpoenas landed. Bank records opened like stubborn clams. The numbers told a story nobody sane would try to read aloud without wincing. Money out of reserves, into consulting. Consulting into accounts. Accounts into gambling markers, and a white tile restaurant with Edison bulbs, and a single good Yelp review. The review was from Karen's cousin. Then, before the week flipped, unmarked cars eased into our spotless little streets at dawn. I was on the porch with coffee when I heard a knock across the lane. The polite kind that means the opposite of polite. Karen stepped out in slippers. Hair not helmeted for once. Clipboards nowhere in sight. She looked at the badge, looked at the cuffs, and let out a sound half curse, half sigh that echoed down the cul-de-sac like a weather change. I won't pretend I felt triumph watching her go. Relief. Sure. Something like sadness, too. I know that sounds soft. But here's the thing. Bullies don't sprout fully formed. They calcify. They learn they can push, and people yield. And then, they believe pushing is order. They forget where neighbor ends, and power begins. Karen had been queen so long, she thought the crown was her skull. The board dissolved under state order. A receiver stepped in, calm woman in a navy blazer who spoke like a mechanic explaining an engine. We'll untangle, she said. It'll take time. The first thing she did, freeze fines. The second issue refunds. People cried at their mailboxes like those checks were apologies, coming in the form the world understands. Martha replanted her dahlias. I helped dig. The soil smelled like rain and second chances. She put in a row of purple, said, for my Frank, and patted the earth like it was a child's shoulder. Ben and Lila's twins chalked a comet so bright on their driveway, it looked like hope streaking. Tom slept through an entire night, and told me in the morning with the dazed smile of a man who found his pillow again. We turned the old board's meeting room into something better. On Saturday mornings there's a coffee pot, and a stack of donuts, and a sign-up sheet titled, What Needs Doing. Folks write normal things, fence board loose near the culvert. Mrs. Patel needs a ride to the clinic Wednesday. We should fix the park bench splinters. Nobody signs compliance officer. We don't need one. As for me, I took the AG's advice and kept everything as opinion when opinion was all it could be. And, as documented fact, when the paper and video made it so, Stella handled filings with a hawk's patience. The forged amendment. The court said the word I'd been praying to hear invalid. The deed line adjusted to the old truth. Karen's rose garden. Her pride turned out to sit on my land by a few paces. We didn't salt the earth. We composted. Martha suggested it. Let something good grow where something mean once stood. She said. I ain't poetic. But that hit me. We started a little retreat for vets using the cabin when I'm not there weekends to fish and mend, and laughed too loud without a letter on the door Monday, telling us the laughter measured in acoustic disturbance. Tom runs it. Martha manages bookings with a binder and the terrifying kindness of a woman who knows your middle name and your favorite pie. We keep a coffee can on the counter labeled, If You Can. It feels slow and honest. Sometimes I walk the shoreline at dawn and think about how close I came to folding. There were nights I stared at those red final notice letters and felt my ribs tighten like a belt. There's people who'll say, it's just rules. And sometimes they're right. Communities need guardrails. But guardrails ain't supposed to be cages. And authority ain't supposed to be a toy for the person who loves saying no. I wish I could tell you every HOA horror ends like this, with sunlight and garden mulch and a neat bow of justice. Truth is, some don't. Some folks move. Some pay till the checking account squeaks. Some never raise a hand at a meeting because their voice was taught to stay small. That's why I'm telling this now with my dumb, S. And you know, S still sprinkled in. 'Cause if you're sitting at your kitchen table with a stack of letters and a sinking feeling, maybe this is the push to open a binder and start documenting. Maybe it's the nudge to knock on a neighbor's door and say, "Hey, is it just me?" Maybe it's the sign you needed to call an attorney who doesn't scare easy. And maybe, just maybe, it's the reminder that bullies don't do well when people stand shoulder to shoulder. One last thing I didn't tell you, the very best part. After the dust settled, after the AG's office finished its press conference, and the unmarked cars stopped cruising our cul-de-sacs like they'd lost an address, after refunds arrived and fines were forgiven, after Karen's trial dates were set by other hands far away from her clipboard, I found something in my grandfather's trunk I hadn't seen before. It was a Polaroid, edges curled, of him standing on the dock with me as a kid. Both of us grinning like we knew a joke the world didn't. On the back he'd scrawled, in a hand, neat as a blueprint, "This place is yours when I'm gone. Not just the land, the way the neighbors treat each other. Protect that." I taped it inside the cabin door, right where Karen busted in once. So I read it every time I go out. Some evenings, coffee in hand, sun sliding down behind the pines, I hear a car slow by the lane out front. It's always someone new to the neighborhood, seeing the lake for the first time, windows down, breathing that wet wood smell that says, home. I give a little wave. If they stop, I say, "Welcome. We got donuts most Saturdays." If your fence squeaks, Tom's got a drill. If Karen ever shows up with a clipboard, I pause. Smile. Well, she won't. But, hey, if anyone starts acting like a crown grew out of their skull, come, find me. We keep the receipts. We stand together here. So, yeah. Imagine you're paying dues to protect your slice of peace, and the person in charge turns protection into a weapon. Imagine they tell you your grandfather's dock is 3 feet too long. Your wind chimes are a crime. Your laughter is a disturbance. Your life is an inconvenience to their power. What do? You do what we did. You document. You knock on doors. You keep your cool when you can, and let your voice shake when it must. You remember that community standards without community is just someone in a white SUV making rules for the mirror. What would you do here? Would you fight? Or would you flee? Anyone else at a HOA do something this wild to you, or, like, even half this wild? Drop your story below. Somebody who needs that courage is gonna read it tonight. And, if you believe in standing up to bullies while still being good neighbors, stick around. Next time, I'll tell you about the small-town mayor who tried to shut down a veteran's food truck and what happened when he picked the wrong soldier to mess with.